This episode's brought to you by Courage, because being a pussy is just not as much fun, man. Mine comes from a lot of past experience.
Oh, really? Like a lot of stuff in your life?
Just drugs, crime, stupid shit that I'd gotten into in my early 20s. And
well, now I feel like I should be looking around this room for drugs.
It's too late. Everything's locked. But you're fine. You're fine. No, I'm the epitome of rehabilitated, and you're fine.
Ha.
I promise you're semi-safe, and at least physically.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Psychologically, I don't know what happens to people when they leave here.
When do you perceive the prime operating hour of comedians to be?
Right now. Welcome back to the Dust Off the Mic podcast. A dream you want to follow, and
my advice to every comedian I've ever met is like find your voice.
You have it in you. Many a parents would be disappointed on this show.
Find out who you are.
You gonna see the cocaine?
He's like, I don't give a fuck. You were just not ready for something. That's what that was.
I'm supposed to be, but perplexed, cause I don't really see nobody close to me. Hopefully this ain't wasted, and I know it ain't. You gotta take the time.
All right, let's do it.
It's really cool to see somebody with a teaching background. First of all, you were a teacher first, correct? Before a comedian, or had you dabbled with comedy prior?
No, I started doing comedy my second year teaching. Okay. I met my wife, who was a substitute teacher. Nothing weird, everybody, relax. She was a substitute teacher at the school. I got a date with her.
Okay.
And she hates when I tell this story, but it's absolutely true. And I was so sort of enamored of her. Like, I thought she was so hot. I did not feel worthy of going on this date with her. So I scheduled my first open mic within a week of meeting her. And it's not that she was interested in comedians in any way whatsoever. There was like no part of her that was like, gee, I'd like to be with you as a comic. It's just that dumb thing that guys do where we use the motivation of a woman to do the thing that we would have done anyway. So I had always wanted to be a comic, and I sort of used the occasion of meeting her to make that leap. So she met me as a teacher and has been on every part of this journey with me. And I think she's excited for me to one day get off of it. Stop doing new things, Jay.
That's so awesome to have the support to it. My wife as well, man. Like, it's kind of weird, like, because I've been a salesman for a long time, and to go to her and say, like, I want to start delving into this, and like, this is the plan. Like, I know you've been comfortable with this so far, but now I'm going to shake everything up. And to have a ride or die like that, that's awesome.
I always say there's a lot of overlap between sales, seduction, and stand-up. Not that they all three start with S, but they all three have the same thing in common, which is you need to convince this person or group of people that you're talking to that the one thing that is very obviously the thing that you want is not the thing you care about. Right. Because if you walk into a car dealership and the guy's like, I really need to sell this to you, you're not going to buy from that guy. But if the guy goes, hey, this is a great car, and there's a line around the block of people that want it, and it might be good for you, it might not be, that guy is going to sell a ton more cars.
You actually sell the thing almost last.
Right.
You sell the thing last. Like, when I sell stuff, or cars, campers, whatever, it's you're buying from me. Right. I come with this deal. And a lot of people think salesmen are liars or we're pieces of shit. You're not wrong, but you're not right as well. But at the same time, believe it or not, your salesman is not allowed to lie to you.
Right.
So we've become masters of delivering hard truth, and people perceive that negatively, which comedians go through the same thing. We look at things in such a weird perspective for the most part. And we look at it from a perspective that I call them normies.
Yeah.
That normies don't.
Civilians,
right. People who don't have, sociopathic tendencies.
Right.
They don't really think that way. They rely on a system. They rely on conditioning. And we kind of think outside the box a bit. And that's not a gloat or a brag. It's just, it's actually kind of like a reactive response to at least my career path and the choice of becoming a comedian. Like, it just happens.
I was talking to a group of college kids yesterday. They were doing there's a friend of mine is a professor in Ohio, and she asked me to come in, talk to her class on stand-up. And I described the life of a stand-up as like constantly having a pebble in your shoe about everything. Yep. And it's this idea of like, if you go to a barbecue, most people just go to the barbecue and enjoy themselves. And we have this like sub processor, this co-processor that's running constantly, just sort of looking at all of the stuff that doesn't quite make sense to us. And I would love to turn it off. I've said many times, if I could get behind a donkey and have the donkey kick me in the head into whatever that part of my brain that's constantly running turns off, be a much happier person. It's a Heisenberg uncertainty principle of life, that you cannot be part of something and observing that thing at the same time. And we tend to observe everything that we do as we're doing it, which means we can't participate in the things that we're doing as we do them. And it's not a great mindset. If you're listening to this and you want to do stand-up, my advice to you, don't run away, go do something fun.
Yeah, we almost have to. It's like a weird brain pattern that, like, I can't stop talking.
Right.
Like, those who know me well and those who have taken the time and energy to get to know me well, know, like, I'm on constant 1,000 miles an hour mode.
Yeah.
I was explaining to my wife the other day. It's like, when I leave the house, and I'm in sales, and you're coming across combative people constantly. You're in an uncomfortable position. I have to kind of switch on a bit of an animal and a bit of an act.
Right.
But at the center, it's me. Same thing with comedy. You switch it on, and you become what you have to be and what you would like to be, and what in order to get that point across.
Right. It's a version of yourself that is a heightened version of yourself,
Like
but
an alter ego.
still you at the end of the day.
Yeah. Hopefully it's like an embodiment of good things and redeemable things. But sometimes in order to put that energy out, you kind of got to be a bit of a dick.
Well, especially doing stand-up if you start in the Philly area. Now, did you start where was
Jersey?
Where'd you start? What was your open
My
mic?
first spot was a place called Pizza Forno in Maple Shade.
Is that
it's
near
not around anymore.
The Pizzeria Uno there? Is that what I'm thinking of? Or the bowling
I honestly
alley?
don't even know. It's on Church. I don't even know
Okay.
if it's a pizza place anymore. I was like 16, 17. And it was like, we set up microphones and speakers, and people were like, oh, I guess there's going to be a comedy show.
Yeah.
It's not like, it was a perfect spot to pop a cherry, where like, this is probably not going to go well, but who cares?
Yeah, you're not a real comic, I say, until you're sitting at a bar somewhere and you have a stomach ache that the bartender is going to come over and go, "You guys ready?" Because a bar gig where nobody knows that comedy is coming is like, there is no harder spot in the world that we do than that.
Bowling alleys, open mics and bars. My brother and I, and my father. My father was a comedian. He just passed in January.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thanks. He pretty much got it started as far as comedy goes, and as far as like getting my brother and I into it. I kind of took a little bit different of a comedic turn than my brother did. But it was mostly small spots. My dad had done Helium before.
Nice.
And my brother had done a couple of bigger clubs. They had their own, like comedy circuit. Like I think they called it Comedy 215.
Okay.
And then there was South Jersey Comedy Club. I think
Okay.
they were kind of commingling at some point. Now I currently work with AC Jokes and a couple of friends from there.
Okay, down in they're in the old Tropicana spot.
Yeah,
right?
I believe so. I haven't been to that location. I've been at their Roberts location in Berlin.
Nice. Okay.
And I've been talking with a few people to try and get my own like monthly regular show, knock the cobwebs off every week if I could.
That's great.
Yeah. Get it going.
So I'm thinking, who do I know at AC Jokes? Is that that's Zach? Who else? I'm so bad with names.
I just worked with Zach Pickett.
Zach Pickett. Yeah,
And then,
he used to be
Benford.
the bartender at the old comedy stop at the Tropicana.
Okay.
And Zach and I would talk, and he said he wanted to do stand-up, and I used to let him come with me to do colleges.
Oh, awesome.
And now he's doing all sorts of stuff. He's doing great.
He was hilarious, man.
He's
I
a
kind of
good
cut
dude.
him short. I lit him up too soon. I don't prefer to host. I don't like hosting. I like your 15-20 minute guest spots or like a head spot if I can manage it. But yeah, I lit him up too soon. I felt bad, but
I'm always okay being lit up soon.
Really?
I always say, like, if I'm doing 45 and they like me at 38, I'm cartwheeling right out of there and home.
Yeah. Okay.
My goal is to get home as soon as possible. That is the J Black guarantee. I will be leaving your space as quickly as I can to get home.
So do me a favor. Walk me through like the thought pattern of steady career as a teacher, working towards, an academic career, and then going into what I would imagine is almost an inverse, like a very, very unstable, your own progression, your own energy coming back to you kind of career. What's that like? What was that like going through your brain?
Well, I mean, at the time, it didn't seem like a huge step because I was doing colleges and I was doing a ton of colleges, and I was making more money doing colleges than I was teaching. Right, so I was making like good money performing stand up. So the idea of taking the leap, because I was getting so much work in stand up, it was starting to make my life miserable. So, it actually got to the point where I was just stretched so thin that making the decision was easier, probably because I was sleep deprived. My brain wasn't active. But what's interesting is I put in my 2 weeks, or I guess my month. I forget how long it is with teaching because we had to find a replacement for the kids and everything. I put it in, and my wife was pregnant, like literally like 3 weeks
You're
later.
all about good timing, huh?
Yeah. I always think if it had been the other way around, I'd still be teaching right now. But the hardest part of this is, my wife did marry a stable person who went on to literally the least stable job you could have. I went to Europe to do a tour with the troops. I got a call on a Wednesday. I was on a flight on a Thursday. You know what I mean? Like literally the next day, I'm like, I'm out. I gotta go, and I'm going to Germany. And my wife has been really good about being okay with that, especially because that's how we make money, is me taking these gigs. But it can be difficult. It can be difficult to not know, like, when friends go like, hey, we're having a wedding on a Saturday, I'm like, sorry. And they're like, well, you can't take one Saturday off. And I was like, what if I had a wedding on a Tuesday afternoon? You know what I mean? Like, what if my wedding was my kid's birthday party was Wednesday at 10 a.m.? You would call me a lunatic. I live an inverse life.
Yep.
And that can be tough.
Well, I've talked about it since I started the podcast. It's a lifestyle that does not rely on a clock in, clock out system. Your time is not your value. Your effort and energy is your value.
Right.
And a lot of people, like, I broke that down to somebody the other day, and they're like, wait, say that again. It's just like, all right, so I don't go into work and clock in. As a salesman, I only make money if I sell something. So my effort, energy of drawing people in, I could sit there for an hour and make, $5,000. And I can sit there for 3 days and make zero. So if I want to. And that, I imagine, would be an easy transition, at least on my part, as far as like the motivation to make more, make that deal, so to speak, earn a gig. So that's kind of cool that it wasn't as difficult a choice as some would imagine.
Well, it's that thing of like, I don't know if it's ADHD. I don't know what it is. Jay Leno once described being on stage as the only time his brain was totally turned on. And I relate to that heavily. I relate to the idea of, the way I describe it is, it's like walking around the regular world is like being in black and white, and getting on stage is like, the moment that the door to Oz opens up, or the door to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory opens up, and everything is in color and brighter and bigger. Like the world turns on for me when I'm on stage. And, I don't know. I'm sure I would be capable of it because, everybody is capable of doing the things that they need to do to survive. But like not being able to get that juice on a regular basis, and knowing that it's out there, the decision to sort of like wade into that pool was easier because once you've been in there, I can't imagine not being in there anymore. So I think it helps that, I always say whenever you see open mics, there's usually two types of people that do their first time. The ones that get up and they go, well, that's out of my system now.
Yeah.
And then the ones like me where it's like the heroin is hitting my brain.
I do this to feel normal now.
Right. I will do this until I'm dead.
Yeah.
You hear about what's his name, George Burns, making plans to do a stand-up show on his 100th birthday. And you go, I get it. Like, I get it. You see, like, there's that Joan Rivers documentary that came out like a decade ago where, she's looking at her book going, April's a little light. And you're like, you're Joan Rivers. You make $800,000 a show. Like, what do you care about your light April? And it's like, it never goes away.
It's a niche you got to keep scratching, man.
Yeah. So it wasn't hard to leave to scratch the itch on a more regular basis from that point of view.
What do I see on your Facebook, you have a bit of a schedule. How far do you usually travel?
So, I always tell my my representatives, my manager, Russell Best, the best manager, love that guy. If I can get home that night, count it as triple pay, because it's triple the value to me if I can drive somewhere, do the show, and drive home. Staying overnight. I have 3 kids. I think it's a boy and 2 girls. I haven't checked. No, I have a 16-year-old, I have a 13-year-old, and I have an 8-year-old. And anytime I can be back and be there in the morning, it's worthwhile. So, I try to like have 3 or 4 weeks in a row where I'm just driving to local gigs. And then next week I go to Reno, and the week after that I go to Vegas. I try to put those 2 together. I'll do cruises all over the world.
How's a cruise comedian lifestyle?
So it's rough.
I hear that.
Now here's the thing. I perform for Norwegian mostly, and they have comedy clubs on the boat.
Okay.
So it's essentially just like doing stand-up, in Vegas, right? I'll be at the MGM. They put me up at the MGM. I walk downstairs at 7:30. I do my show at 8. I walk back upstairs at 9:15. It's a pretty easy gig from that point of view. Cruise is the same way. I'm in a passenger cabin. At 7:00 I go do my show. At 7:45 I go back to my room. Okay. So from that point of view, it's just like doing comedy anywhere. The hard part is, you are stuck on this boat with people who are on vacation, and you are there to do stand-up, and you're apart from your family. So I happen to like my family a lot. So every time I'm on the boat, I feel like one of those movies where like the little street urchin is like looking inside at the family eating in the restaurant, and they're like shivering, and it's like, I just would like one small piece of spaghetti, please, sir. So like from an emotional standpoint, you're just sort of like walking in a circle in paradise. And believe it or not, like there's this weird thing that happens when you're a full-time comic, where even people who are close to you. We were just talking about this. I do a podcast with Angela Catati and Rhea Hughes, and we were talking about that if you talk for your living, if you do it well, no one thinks you're working, right? Because a good talker is one that looks nonchalant when they're talking. When I do an hour-long stand-up set, if I'm doing it at my best, it looks like I'm doing literally nothing.
It looks like you're just having a conversation with yourself.
Yeah, like I was walking in, this occurred to me on the way in. Won't this be fun to talk about? And everybody goes,
it bugs me.
Yeah,
that's
this guy, he gets it. Our conversation here, if this is good, it doesn't look like you're doing any work at all. We're just 2 guys having a chat
who happen to live really fucking close, by the way.
It's weird.
That was wild. I don't remember how I came across your profile. It was like an open mic thing on Facebook, and I think I saw a link to your shit, and it just said Lenape regional teacher and comedian. I was like, hold the fuck on. That's exactly what you know what I mean? And then I started following you, and your videos are funny as shit.
Oh, I appreciate it.
I've seen your daughters get involved a bit with it.
Oh,
Are they gift to gab, or are they camera shy?
No, none of my kids are camera shy. My son is very interested in performing. My daughter is good at it and does not seem to want to do it. And my youngest just wants to do cartwheels. So
you said 8?
Yeah, she's 8 and she just likes doing cartwheels. Yeah. They, I try to involve them because I just like having my family involved. It makes it fun. But the thing of it is, you do these things, and even my wife will just be like, "What are you complaining about? You're in the Caribbean and you're working literally 4 times in a week, and the rest of the time is your own time." And I have to try to tell her, like, I'm complaining about the fact that I'm stuck in the Caribbean for a week with only 4 shows and 23 hours a day to kill. I know it sounds like poor little rich boy, like, oh,
but I'm in the best place with people I don't give a shit about.
Right. And you can't really, have a connection with the crew because they, you're entertainment. So you're sort of a separate connection from them. You can't really identify with the passengers because what am I going to be, like the third wheel with like a couple on their second honeymoon?
They're going to try and make you be funny when you're not in that that mindset or that mood.
And if you're lucky, one of my friends is on the boat with me who doing the other comedy thing, and that's a good time and you can spend time with them. But it's a thing of, it's an isolating experience in a way that other jobs aren't, because you have coworkers in your other job, and comedians are kind of lone wolves. We sort of go out, do the show, and then come home.
Like, even if you have a good team, it's still like their career, their path. It's very similar to sales. I can always make a correlation with comedy and sales. However, I do have a place to go and a coworker staff and all that stuff and things to like physically put a goal onto. So the open ended of it all is That takes a lot of balls, man.
I appreciate that.
Takes a lot of balls.
A lot of
It's admirable.
stupidity too.
Sure, but I mean, most things are.
Yeah.
I mean, how stupid is it to convert half your fucking garage into a podcast studio, just because you want to dive back into a dream?
Yeah.
You know, hey, honey, my life's been stable so far. You want to shake shit up a bit? You know what I mean?
Well, you know, I do admire. So, you know, one of the things I always talk about is like people. You know, my son does not play video games.
Okay.
And he told me, and I asked him because I got him a PlayStation 5. I'm like, you know, why aren't you playing the video game? And he said, well, if I play video games, I only get good at a video game. If I practice music, then at the end of the day, I can entertain people. I have a skill that I can travel with. And I realized he sort of picked up on something that and vocalized something that I believed my entire life, which is if you have hobbies that can be monetized, you know,
yeah.
Even now, like, I don't know if you have sponsorship for this, but one day you might.
Broke as fuck right now.
Right. So like, if you're doing something where you're like, if you're out golfing, chances are you're probably not going to be a golf pro.
No.
But if this grows, this can be a monetized thing where it's your hobby, but it's also a way to make extra money.
Yeah. Most of the people who I came up with in comedy, I believe it or not, I had him on the show. His name is Chris Smith. He's also a teacher,
right.
Inner city teacher, and you know, I've seen him balance both, and I've seen him, you know, dive into one.
Right.
You know? So to see him go through it, and then to also see another completely different like life path individual,
right,
you know, be able to shed one and embrace the other is actually, you know, it's a really cool thing to watch.
I appreciate that.
Of course, man. I appreciate you. Like people that are proof to, you know, pushing past the comfort zone and are proof that, you know, drive and passion are, you know, money's not everything.
Right.
At least not at first.
No, it's not until you get a cocaine addiction.
Yeah,
and then,
course, dude,
money becomes very important.
Now you're preaching to the choir. Yeah, there was a lot of bumpy road in between my age 17 and now.
Well, I think usually if you get into comedy, there is a bunch of bumpy road because, you know, and some roads are bumpier than others. But I think that one of the things about finding the world a place to, I don't want to say mock, but finding humor in the world means that your antenna are usually a little bit more sensitive, and you're seeing things that maybe other people aren't seeing, and you're feeling things a little bit harder than maybe other people feel. And, you know, comedy is always sort of a bomb to that, but you wouldn't need that bomb if it wasn't for the fact that you were feeling this way and seeing these things. So I think before you find comedy, and really even after you find comedy, you're kind of a square peg really trying to fit into a round hole.
Yeah, it's definitely not a profession for everybody.
No. And I say that unless you're a really rich person looking for a comedian coach that they're going to pay a lot of money for. If that's the case, I'm ready to roll, guys. Right.
Like you said, at first I thought it was going to be that. Like, I'm going to, you know, maybe fizzle out. But the more I kept doing it, like, I taught myself all this.
Right.
You know, and it's been so much trial and error and people helping me. Like, I had a buddy from Arkansas literally had walked me through how to build that computer.
Wow.
On FaceTime, you know, because like I said, I was gaming. Like, this computer was built for gaming. So, I mean, it was really.
What's your game of choice, by the way?
Oh, shit. Depends on what mood I'm in, man. I like a lot of survival games, like Daisy. I like Escape from Tarkov. Mostly, like they're just computer games that like you couldn't even put on the console because the control patterns are so infinite.
Gotcha. There's a lot going on with the keyboard.
Yeah, like you know, streamers like Aqua FPS and Landmark, like they kept me kind of sane when my dad was in the hospital. You know?
Sure.
It's just like because this gives me so much anxiety. Like, it was a car accident, titties, racism, you know, politics, racism, you know what I mean? And then you're just like, maybe it's just because my attention span's a little different than today's generation. I want something to focus on for a little bit.
I think ideally, just going by that, would be a topless woman in a car accident talking racism. Or ideally is what you're
topless KKK member.
Yeah.
I don't know. The internet's so crazy anymore. It's like if social media is weird. Like I'm learning patterns of algorithms and like what platform likes which kind of video. Like I have a feeling one platform won't like the podcast format, another one likes my reactions, and you know what I mean. who cares at this
Yeah.
point? Like, I just want to do it.
We're all a cargo cult for the algorithm at this point in life. We're just sacrificing virgins in the hope that the almighty algorithm will benefit us with some juice.
What do you think's next for comedians? Do you think they're gonna like? You think we as comedians are gonna like kind of vocalize the right way of thinking, or do you think they're gonna demonize us and try and have us all put as heretics?
Well, I think that there's always going to be, one of the things I'll say is, like, if people talk about cancel culture, if you're talking about cancel culture, you're not canceled. What we're really talking about, and I mean this, is consequence culture. And if you're going to say something and you're going to upset people with what you say, you can't get mad at the people who get upset at you for what you say. You have to be prepared for the consequence.
Sure.
Right? You have to be prepared for it. And if you are prepared for it, and if you are able to, deflect it or think about it, then that we're always going to be okay with that, right? You so long as you are holding yourself accountable for what you're saying, and you say to yourself, okay, this is what I want to say, this is why I want to say it, and if people get mad at me, I will be prepared with a response to those people who get mad at me. Then there's no such thing as cancel culture. There's only consequence culture, and you're either prepared for it or you're not. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I come at it from an angle. You want to fix your mic a little bit?
Oh,
covering
the wrong way?
that pretty mug of yours.
Oh no, it's better. You get more viewers if they can't see me.
I mean, is it weird that, like, I don't care what comes out of my mouth, and that almost everything I talk about never comes from like a negative perspective? It's like black jokes come from my love and my adaptation of black culture,
right?
It's my perspective of it. Like, okay, you can get mad at that all you want, but it's still 33 years of perspective, opinion, all my feelings, all my emotions, every person I've ever met, and it's still an outward projection. And the outward projection is meant to make you laugh, not to make you cry or to make you think you're less than. It's never to do that.
I would say that what you would need to be prepared for in a moment like that, and the question you have to ask yourself is, if there is pushback for the stuff that I'm saying, can I listen to that pushback honestly and absorb it? Because I think when defenses go up is when there's a problem. Like, if I say a joke and half the audience gets mad at me, right? I can say to myself, well, they're just an uptight audience. Or I can go, whoa, hold on a second. Why are you guys upset about the thing I just said? And if I ask that question, it's just like being in marriage counseling, right? Two people who are together and love each other are both coming from a place of like good stuff, right? They're both coming from a positive place. We both want this relationship to work, but we're arguing. Why are we arguing? And one of the things you learn when you're having, any kind of counseling is your defenses are up and you're not listening to what the other person is saying. And your first thought when the other person starts to talk to you is to list all the reasons why they're wrong for being upset with you. And I think that as performers, just as as human beings, you got to listen to the criticism. Now, if you listen to the criticism and reject it, that is a choice, and I can respect that choice. But I think most guys are not willing to listen to the criticism. So I would say, if you're willing to listen to the criticism, you just say what you want, but listen to what people say when they get upset, if they get upset.
Fair enough. I mean, a lot of comedians either steer further into it, try and get them like on their side.
Right.
It's more like again, I'm going to bring sales back into it just because it's my life.
Sure.
You're not trying to win an argument. You're not going to be able to, like, I don't give a crap what anybody's politics are, minor and almost non-existent. But let's say you were right wing or left wing. You're never going to convince either one of them to agree with everything. Right. But I mean, hopefully through our system of checks and balances, you can come up with a solution.
Right.
When a customer is just dumb wrong, and they're often wrong. I don't remember the guy's name, but I Googled the other day. Whoever came up with the term, the customer is always right. That term was developed in 1919.
Right.
And it was probably in reference to the industrial boom, and customers didn't know shit back then. And most of you guys don't know shit now.
Right.
That's why you hire guys that don't lie to you. It's why you hire guys, but and almost everybody thinks it's like a combative perspective. It's like, this guy's trying to lie to me. He's trying to say whatever he has to say to make a deal. It's actually, I'm trying to convince you that there is a solution. You came to me for a reason. Same thing with comedy. You know what I mean? Like, you're here for a reason. You're here to maybe learn some stuff, maybe think about things a little bit differently. And it's about coming up with a solution on that. Yes, my views may be vastly different than this particular crowd.
Right.
But at least a perspective will come up with a solution about how you feel about my perspective. And that's, I feel like, a lot of people's problems nowadays. It's like almost like a temper tantrum that people don't feel the way you feel.
Right.
And that's so weird to me. Like, it goes against everything I was raised to believe.
I agree with you that, the audience getting, or, I think a lot of times we're conflating stand up with social media, because so much of what we do online has immediate feedback and a lot of it's negative.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in general, people do like to be upset about stuff, and they maybe jump to it a little bit too quickly. In person, I have very rarely gotten people that angry with me in person. Online,
yes.
A lot.
That's an e-penis coming at you. That's what we call it in the gamer world, is a big old e-penis.
E-penis. I like that, right? But like, because I know if you knew me, if you were in my audience, I get a lot of guys in my replies going, you're not funny, I hate you. Yeah. And I always say, if you were in my audience, you'd be laughing, you'd be having a good time, and you wouldn't be saying this. And I know that because I performed in front of 600 trillion people, and none of them have replied the same way you have, because in person, this is not how people act. So, let's be clear when we say, like, this pushback is almost always online. Mm-hmm. And I think you can discount some of it as just people being angry because they like to be angry. Right. But as my dad used to say, if one person says you're an ass, that guy's probably a jerk. But if 100 people call you an ass, there's a chance you might be an ass. So I think that, being realistic and saying, are the things that I'm saying upsetting people? Mm-hmm. And if they are, why are they upsetting people? What am I saying? Like, and I just bring this up. Like, I won't say his name. There was a comic that somebody asked me if I would take him to some colleges. And mm-hmm. I did. And as we were going in, I would tell him, like, hey, even if the college says R-rated, do PG-13. And he would always say why, because he was a very dirty act. And I would say, because college kids don't want to think about someone your age having sex. Because even if it's okay to talk about sex, they don't think of people over 30 as sexual creatures. And thank God, because the species would never reproduce if young people had to think about old people having sex. And he would say, but my joke about blank. And I would go, well, write a different joke. And he would go, but this is a good joke. And I would say, yes, but not for this venue. Right. And we would get into this argument about it. And I'm like, I said, we're two grown men having a discussion about your wrinkly balls joke. So, like, you're not Lenny Bruce breaking down the barriers of societal norms by talking about your wrinkly balls. You're just a guy who wrote a wrinkly balls joke, and you want to tell that joke because you're too lazy to write another joke. And that's just the end of it. That's the long and short of it. So a lot of these guys that are carping and complaining about people getting mad at their edgy bullshit, you know why they're mad? Because it's not as good as you think it is. And number two, you don't have other stuff. So write other stuff. Mm-hmm. If they're getting that upset with it, like, people use art, and the defense of art for stuff that's a little silly sometimes. Mm-hmm. And, we're not defending the art of the wrinkly ball joke. It is arbitrary. Mm-hmm. Do another joke. You can do another joke.
What makes it art is crafting it to that venue.
Right.
And, like, I was just telling somebody the other day, I prefer the headliner spots or the later guest spots, because that you can kind of see the reaction. You can kind of gauge the crowd a bit or something.
See where they're at.
See where they're at.
Meet them there.
If there's 14 old ladies at one single table, maybe not, soak them in a cum joke. You know what I mean? Which I've done, and it's a gamble. It is a gamble. You got to hope they're the nasty grannies that just wanted to cut loose. Some of them are
have some fun.
Some of them are like, oh God.
Right.
Why is this man pretending to come on me? It was never in England.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in England, they probably have a different word for it.
Ejaculate.
Yeah. It's probably.
It's got to be more formal.
Yeah. Bubble hum or something.
What was that?
Bubble hum. I don't know.
Bubble hum?
I just saying, because they have so many different words
love
for things.
Porridge.
Yeah. Love porridge. That works. I like that.
Sure. So what else? What's the next show you got coming up, and how can we get a look at that?
So I'm going to I have 2 shows at Uncle Vinny's this week. I'm working with my buddy Vic DiBattista on Thursday, and then Sunday I'm doing a benefit show for them. And then I go to Reno on Thursday, and then I go to Vegas the following Monday. And that's it's always fun. I always tell people, come to Vegas. It's like a $300 ticket. Come on out. Not my ticket, the plane ticket. If I was charging $300, I'd be in a much better outfit. But come to the MGM and see me there. It's always a blast.
Fair. If you could reach that one person that's thinking about moving to the next step in their dream, in their path, like what would be something you would say to them to push them forward?
I would say that the gulf between where you want to be and where you are is a lot smaller than you think. And where people get real tripped up is having a path to follow, because most of the stuff that you want to do, there's a path. If you want to be a lawyer, you go to law school, you take your bar exam, you get a job at a law firm, you're a lawyer, right? There is a path that has been broken for you. And when you're talking about the entertainment industry, or anything that does not have a set path, right? Like if you could go to major in stand-up in college and then get an internship at a comedy club and become a comedian that way, there would be far more comedians than there are, because there's so many people that like have that thought, but then they get to the realistic part of it and they go, well, how do I do that? I can't move to LA. I can't move to New York. And what I would say is, don't move to LA. Don't move to New York. Get an open mic. And if there isn't an open mic near you, start one. When I started, I went to an open mic at the Northeast Comedy Cabaret on Roosevelt Boulevard in Philadelphia. And I went up and I did my bit, and it did pretty well. And then I went back, and there was week 2, it didn't go as well because it was the same bit. So I was like, I'm going to start writing material. But I looked around at the other open micers and I was like, I'm going to start writing material for the open micers. And open micers have a different sensibility than general crowds. And I knew that sort of instinctually, that like the stuff that comedians laugh at is far darker than the stuff that regular audiences laugh at.
Yes.
So I was like, I got to start performing in front of regular audiences. So within like 8 weeks of my first open mic, I started booking shows at coffee houses and bars and wherever I could, just to get experience. So I started in March. By April or May, I had 6 shows running a week, Tuesday through Sunday. And I was going and emceeing those shows because that's where I could get the most amount of time, right? Now, by the end of that summer, all of those shows had sort of dried up, because that's what happens with like little book shows like that. But by the time I went back to the open mic in September of that year, the guy that was running the open mic was like, wow, you're really good. Let me call the guy who owns the club and get you regular spots. So I did 8 weeks of open mics, and that was it for the entirety of my career, because I just was like, all right, where is the problem? The problem is getting regular shows. I can't get regular shows till I'm good at the open mic, but I'll never be good at the open mic because I know myself enough that I'm going to start writing for the other comics at the open mic. What is the solution to that problem? And I think most people in that moment, most smart people go, well, there is no solution. Let me go back to my life, right? Where I went, okay, the goal here is to start booking other shows. I'm going to start doing that. And I started going to coffee houses going, what's your slow day? And they said Thursday. And I was like, all right, I'll charge to do a show on Thursday. I'll bring in some comedy and we'll do that. And they were like, great, let's do that. It's like that sort of mindset of like, what is the problem? How do I fix it? Most people would go, it's either unsolvable or I hope somebody else solves it for me.
Yeah.
I think the only difference is that I had early on was like, and I still do it. Like I produce movies. For the longest time, I was waiting for other people to give me money to make or to buy scripts from me to make movies. And I did like 5 or 6 of those. And I was like, well, okay, the real key to this is having access to capital.
Sure.
I'm a white dude in America. I should have access to capital. Pretty easy for us. I'm a middle-aged white man. Let's use some of that privilege. So I started calling people I knew that had money. And before you knew it, I had a movie company, and we produced 2 or 3 movies a year that I write. Just because it's like, all right, I see what other people are doing. And to quote, The Edge, the movie with Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin, if one man can do it, another man can do it. So let's figure out how to do it.
Where would you say most of your joke inspiration comes from? Everyday life, a lot of past experience.
Yeah,
combination of all?
everyday life, a lot of stuff that I observe sort of as it relates to my life. I think that part of, the curse and the blessing of being a stand-up is that, your brain really is always going.
Mhm.
And, I was watching football. I have a new bit that I worked out where I was watching football, the Super Bowl,
Mhm.
and I realized the amount of energy put into making this game seem important, right?
Mhm.
Because like at the end of the day, it's just, grown men playing a game, right? But we can't just say that.
No.
No one can just say like we just like watching people play a game. So you need to bring out all these men in suits with telestrators. The Blue Angels needs to fly over. They
Mhm.
need to do like a 6-minute rendition of the Star Spangled Banner, and everybody has to treat it like it's a big deal. And I realized they're just bamboozling us. And
Mhm.
we want to watch men play a game, so men have to pretend that it's important so they don't feel bad about watching a game. That's what we have to do. And that thought stayed with me, and I just toyed with it and thought about it. And now it's sort of like, a centerpiece of this whole bit about like, men can't just admit that the stuff that they like is stupid.
Yeah.
They have to pretend it's important. So like something like that, where I'm just watching the Super Bowl, that moment occurs to me in my brain. It sort of goes through a process and then it comes out as comedy. Follow me on social media and see, do I survive this experience?
This
ladies
isn't
and
even
gentlemen?
really recording. I'm just kidding.
It would be the first time I was brought into a garage and told to do stuff.
Was there at least an even exchange?
No. I came in for the meth and I left a mess.
Oh. I've been there, man.
Yeah.
I've been there. Plug all your socials. Let me make sure everybody can follow, like, and subscribe you.
The easiest thing to do is just go to jayblack.tv. That's JAYBLACK.TV. I always say it's the letter, then the color, then the thing that raised you. I have Facebook and Twitter and all the other stuff. Just follow me on everything. If everybody watching follows me, and then they also get 12,000 of their friends to also follow me, I'm going to be in really good shape by the end of this.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks
Thank
for
you
coming
for
by,
having
man.
me.
Appreciate you.
Look,
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
How you try and press the kid and really you was soft? All you know is capping, homie, you don't know the law. Pedal to the metal, you ain't catching me in park. I just hit the start, I don't wanna speak. Talking all that good, so I just hit you with the please. Running up the score like Tyreek, I'm going deep. Watch me how I'm saucing, I be spreading it with ease. You gon' see the peace, you gon' see the flex.